Man, moving out sucks. I want to go play a game to relax. I did not think this through. Well, I guess if I'm not up for playing video games, I can do the next best thing. Look at them. But I don't want to strain my eyes by looking at a screen all day. Perfect. Have you ever wanted a coffee table book that immediately gets across to your guests that you're a gamer? Well, try out this BlazBlue Central Fiction art book. It's got all of the... Oh fuck, this isn't the right book. Well, try out this Mega Man art book filled with years of fun concept art and trivia. Ah yeah, that's the stuff. Video game art books are one of my favorite kinds of game merchandise, I guess you could call it. But that's the neat thing about these. I mean, sure, they're art books about games, but these things exist entirely on their own merits too. These beautiful tomes often collect a large chunk of the art that went into making a game, along with developer insights and even sometimes interviews with the creators. I absolutely love reading them and have amassed a bit of a collection over the years, so I figured, hey, let's talk about them. As some of you fellow collectors may know, there's really two categories that most of these video game art books fall into. There's the chunky, monkey, expensive but worthwhile large hardcover boys, and then there's the wastes of time. Let's talk about these first. Now, I have no room to talk trash because I have a billion of these made of paper paperweights, but that's really more so because they've just kind of accumulated over time. Small art books like this often comes with collector's editions of games, which I buy a ton of because I'm a sucker. Some of them are worthwhile, but really, most of them are lackluster. NIS America is probably the worst company for these. On one hand, most of their collector's editions have matching art books, which is cool. They're all the same size and look nice on a shelf because of that. But when they're printed on paper this small, it's hard to even appreciate the art. And that's not even mentioning how half the time you're not getting concept art, but instead, like, final art, which is... I mean, yeah, this looks nice, but you know I can also just play the game. Every now and then, though, yeah, they've had some kick-ass art books, despite the size. The Liar Princess and the Blind Prince got a storybook that recreates an opening cutscene from the game, and Trails of Cold Steel 3 and 4 got surprisingly thick art books with nice covers and loads of interesting tidbits. I definitely would have preferred these a bit bigger, but I'm not too upset with what we got here. Unfortunately, for every Cold Steel, you've got an SNK Anniversary Collection. What is this? This thing is thinner than my criminal record. I mean, it's got some cool insights, but it's 30 pages long. This doesn't feel like an art book. It feels like a pamphlet I would pick up at IKEA. And Nisa isn't even the only company with these dinky art books. Small limited editions actually come with this style of art book rather frequently. Life is Strange and Life is Strange Before the Storm have these kinda cool little art books, but I still find these leave a lot to be desired. Same with Kingdom Hearts 3 and really most of these smaller books in general. I just find that they don't have enough space on the pages or pages altogether. It takes like 15 minutes to flip through one, and they usually lack any particularly noteworthy concept art or any kind of developer commentary. Considering you're paying a premium price for these, that's not great. Like the Super Mario All-Stars history booklet is pitiful. Each game has literally 2 sentences from the original creators. I want to hear what they have to say, Nintendo. Is this all they said? I mean, what, did you just call the executives into a room for like 10 minutes? I don't need to see the cover art. Do you not think I have the cover art? If I'm buying this thing, I've already got 12 copies of Galaxy, man, guaranteed. Luckily, Nintendo did better with Kirby's Anniversary. This thing is tiny still, but it does pack a punch. I'm genuinely pretty impressed by it. I just wish they could go back in time and fix this thing. Limited Run Games and similar companies also provide art books for some of their releases, and these range in quality drastically. I love the book for Game Tengoku, for instance, which provides pages upon pages of rough sketches by the artists, but then you have these tiny things like Phantom Breaker. Why is this so small? I refuse to believe that this book properly compiles all of the concept art from the making of this game. All that being said, I guess any of these tiny art books are better than the art book cases. These things are garish as hell on the shelf and usually contain some of the most pitiful offerings of art that there are. On top of that, if you actually use it as a game case, you're going to be moving it around way more than normal, and that probably means it's going to get scuffed or the corners will get damaged in some way. And if that's not an issue, it's still just impractical. Like Final Fantasy XIII 2's Collector's Edition, which combined the game case, art book, and soundtrack case all in one. Kind of a cool concept, but it really just means you can't properly display any of it. Ultimately, the main reason I bother to keep these things around is because they're often the only art book that these games have. I do enjoy flipping through them occasionally. I mean, they're nice collections of the game's art, and since there's no alternative, there's really not that much harm done. Companies normally either give you a small little book with the limited edition or ask you to shell out money for a giant tome of information. There's usually not much in between, it's normally one or the other. Or you can be like Sony and do both. Now, personally, I've quite enjoyed Sony's standardization of the collector's edition. You get the game, a statue, a soundtrack, something small like pins or stickers, and an art book. These things are just as small as the standard Nisa art book, but usually slightly thicker. They're a decent look at the game, but they always release a normal art book, making them completely redundant on my shelf before even a year has passed. I guess if you've ever needed spark notes for an art book, these get the job done, but it's basically an inferior version of another product that's already in the pipeline. I don't need this. It has the same art as the thing that I'm going to buy. Like, surely if you care about this little art book, you're the kind of consumer who would want to buy the big one too, right? And speaking of the big ones, let's talk about those now. If these huge hardcover books look familiar, it's probably because you've seen them before in your local Borders and thought to yourself, this thing is cool, but who's gonna pay that much for it? I wish I could answer that because I sure as hell don't. These are the real deal. While not always cheap, these kinds of art books are often great compendiums to a video game's development. I love these beautiful covers and all of the pages with gorgeous jaw-dropping scenery, and that's just the art. The number of facts that you can learn in these is nothing to laugh at. Seriously, don't laugh at me. Dark Horse is one of the biggest creators of these, and most Sony games follow the same format of art book, which is quite a satisfying look on the shelf. These things are just bursting with extra goodies for fans, and they really showcase a lot of the beautiful pieces that employees have done. And because Dark Horse made them standardized, surely they'll stick to that standard and not make them very slightly different and irritating yeah, I'm not fooling anyone. First, as you've probably seen, they can never keep the logo consistent. Is it that hard to just stick with one style, y'all? This is like the easiest thing to standardize. Why do you change it every time? Second, what the fuck is up with Splatoon and Cuphead? Almost all of their books are the exact same size, except these two. Splatoon is the same height, but like an inch or so less wide. It makes it stick out on the shelf, and I can't tell why would they do it like this? Why would you do it like this? Cuphead is more understandable, considering it's just smaller overall, but like, still, why? I want these to be printed on large pages, guys. I'd buy art books the size of my wall if I could. Don't make them smaller, especially with games as beautiful as Cuphead. Actually, Super Mario Odyssey also is a different size, but it has the opposite problem. It's slightly larger. This doesn't bother me nearly as much, but I still don't quite get why. Also, as much as the plastic sleeve is a neat idea, it can get damaged a bit too easily. Regardless of my nitpicks, I still buy as many of these as I can. I just can't get over how cool it is to see all the behind the scenes and read up on the lore, and there's so many of them, it's just satisfying to collect them. Remember Me is a game that was ironically forgotten, but the art design behind it was phenomenal, and I'm more than happy to have this compendium of it. Everyone knows Hyrule Historia, and for good reason. This thing is awesome. It includes numerous sections dedicated solely to the lore while still providing plenty of concept art. One of my favorite books they've done is The Art of Fire Emblem Awakening, which for some reason highlighted FWB on the cover, which I can only think of as one thing. Awakening is a phenomenal game that reinvigorated the Fire Emblem series, and it's very deserving of an art book of this quality. As with many people, I really enjoyed the support system, but I felt like one playthrough just didn't have enough dialogue. Luckily, the Dark Horse art book was thoughtful enough to include all of the support text from Fire Emblem Awakening. Did anyone ask for this? It's like a third of the entire book. Is it meant to be reference material? If so, reference for what? I struggle to believe that anyone has read most of this, mostly because you need a microscope to read it. Seriously, this shit's near illegible. I make a note to try to read through all of my books, but that habit stops here. Please, if you've read through the entire thing, let me know in the comments, so I can avoid you. You scare me. I'm not as big of a fan of these landscape-oriented art books. I just find them awkward to read, but that doesn't diminish the quality of the art books themselves. The art is still just as beautiful, even if they're impossible to put on those shelves. Ghost of Tsushima is one book that did this. It's also rather unique in that it's traditionally bound with a slipcover to protect it. Really cool, even if it makes me feel like it's gonna fall apart in my hands. In fact, you know how earlier I was saying that a lot of collector's editions art books are normally pretty meh? Well, some of my Sideways art books disprove that. Indeed, not all collector's editions come with dinky little art books. Xenoblade Chronicles 1 and 2 on Switch came with these matching, huge, gorgeous art books. I do wish the one for Xenoblade 2 came with a slipcover to match the first, but a minor complaint all things considered. These guys look amazing on a shelf and contain ample fun details and concept art about the games. These are the kinds of books that I'm surprised they didn't charge an additional price for. I mean, they're that nice. Nintendo also did this with Fire Emblem Three Houses, which, while a bit thinner, also came with a gorgeous landscape-oriented art book. The amount of effort put into these Nintendo offerings is staggering. Capcom also got in on this a bit with the Resident Evil 2 and 3 remakes. These books are thin, but still nice. I can't complain too much about them, although I do wish they had more of a focus on developer commentary. However, both Capcom and Nintendo switched to standard, portrait-oriented books for Resident Evil Village and the Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon re-release, respectively. And yeah, I certainly prefer my books this way. And Dark Horse isn't the only art book creator. There's also Titan, who makes thinner books with nice slipcovers, and Ballistic, who made this beautiful and dense Uncharted 2 book. These are both great, but in my heart, the king of all art books will always be Udon. Udon books primarily seem to focus on Japanese games, and they usually release their art books under the Official Design Works subtitle. Their primarily softcover approach may make them seem like cheaper products, but I assure you they are not. The printings on the cover are always incredible, and I actually think these feel like higher quality products than the Dark Horse books. On top of that, they seem to have more of a focus on the developer insights. Persona 4's art book was actually my first art book ever, and it's a phenomenal look into the art direction behind the game, complete with oodles of concept art and a multi-page interview with Shigenori Soejima, the character designer. For any Persona fans out there, this is highly recommended, and there's matching ones for Persona 3 and Persona 4 Arena. The Persona 5 art book isn't by Udon, so it screwed up the consistency, but it's difficult to complain with how fantastic this book is in its own right. You really can't go wrong with any of these. Udon also made a book about my boy Layton, which also acts as a guide to the series, as well as one on Okami, a game where every frame deserves to be in an art book. There's also two just for Shigenori Soejima's works that focus a bit more on his art, but do also include their own interviews. These are great, but while we're here, I must point out that the paper quality for the second book is noticeably cheaper. It's a substantially longer book, but all of the pages are thinner, so you can't tell just by looking. Not a big deal, but honestly a bit disappointing. I also have a Hatsune Miku one. Not a game, but hey, why not? Art books are a passion of mine, and I genuinely want to thank my family for picking me up so many of these things over the years. You know, I remember saving up for the Persona 4 book, and that Christmas, my mom got me the matching Persona 3 one as well as the 4 Arena one. That was awesome. Similarly, I remember for my birthday unwrapping from my dad the Shigenori Soejima art book, which was at the time very, very hard to find and completely out of stock. I still don't really know how he tracked one down. But I mean, that stuff is magical. To me, these books mean so much. They're not just a portal into the game, they're a portal to the time that I played the game and a portal to the time that I read the book. They kind of encapsulate a lot of memories in one, and I can't stop myself from getting more and continuing to flip through the ones I already have over and over. I have pored over these pages time and time again, and while I haven't read through every single one, that's something I'm trying to fix this year, and regardless, these mean a lot to me. So, thank you for listening to me talk about them for a bit. And anywho, I guess I better get back to packing up. You know, that's kind of the difficult thing with moving all of these, is there's not really an easy way to do it. You either put them all in one box and you have one extremely heavy box, or you kind of distribute them across several boxes and you just make all of the boxes still pretty heavy. It's kind of a dilemma, you know? Fortunately, I know exactly what I'm doing with all of these guys. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. This video was hell to make. I'm recording this like 2 months after filming the rest of it. I'm just so happy it's done. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to subscribe for more videos. I'm having a lot of fun doing this, and the support you guys have been giving has been just phenomenal. And don't forget to smash that like button!